didn't realize it was down, otherwise I would have charged.
4, 3, 2.
Good evening. I'm going to get ready to call this meeting to order. It is 6:05. If we could all stand for the salute of the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. The purpose of this meeting this evening is of the Franklin School Board. It's a budget workshop session that we will be having this evening. We have our administrators online for recording purposes. Kathy, I need you to do a roll call vote just for school board members, please?
Can you tell me who's actually there, or is everybody there?
No. Yeah, I'll help you out here. Cecile Cormier, Delaney Carrier, Paul Doucette, Maureen Obie, Deb, and myself.
Okay.
So that'll help you out. I don't see any board members online, okay? Glenn Carter did reach out to me and said that he was not going to be able to make it this evening. He is the only board member that's reached out to me.
And Christy Martin is not there, correct?
Yeah, Christy reached out to Dan. She might join us on
But
she might be coming on late because she's coming home from work.
Okay.
For administrators within the cafeteria is Dan, Ken, Jewel, and Jefferson.
Okay. Perfect.
And you see everybody that's
now,
online.
Want me to go ahead and do roll call anyway, or you consider that roll call?
No, we really got to do it, so with you do it, call it out.
Tim Dow,
Present.
Paul Doucette,
Here.
Deb Brown,
Here.
Cecile Cormier,
Here.
Delaney Courier,
Here.
and Maureen Obie.
Here.
All right. Again, this meeting is for our first budget work session, and I am going to turn the meeting over to Superintendent Legallo to run the remainder of the meeting with Jefferson and the administration.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. So tonight's the night where we get to walk you through our budget proposal. It's been an interesting budget season, to say the least, with COVID and trying to put all this together. First, I want to thank all of the administrative team and our teachers and staff that put a lot of time and effort into preparing this budget. And certainly Jefferson deserves kudos for all his yeoman's work at putting this all together for you. It's a unique budget season this year due to our revenues and to the fact that some of our projections are difficult to make this year based on the COVID situation. So we're going to start with our projected revenues. And I'm going to have Jefferson kind of walk you through his thought process, or our thought process together as we go down through our revenue sources. I will be talking about probably delaying taking action on the budget. In a typical year, for those new board members that we have, in a typical year we usually go through the budget process and try to have the board approve the budget in March. That's usually what we do. We don't usually present to the city until May, and then the city takes action on the budget in June or even as late as July. So this year, because of some of the uncertainty with some of our revenue projections, we're going to actually talk to you a little bit about maybe waiting till the April board meeting before we actually finalize the budget and actually have the board vote on that budget. It doesn't put us behind in any of the work that we need to do or in any other phase of the budgeting process. It just seems like we could probably get the best revenue estimates possible by waiting an extra month this year based on the COVID issue. So Jefferson, as he goes through his budget projections, will actually talk to you about where he's at with the prediction and why maybe another 6 weeks before we actually approve the budget would be a good course of action. So Jefferson, I'm gonna turn it over to you to talk about revenue, okay?
Okay, hold on. Paul, I got a question.
Will there be another workshop, or will this be the only budget workshop?
We can schedule as many workshops as we need to. This is the first one we have scheduled, and what we usually do is see where we're at the end of the night, and then
You're on this microphone.
and then the board can decide what the next step is. We can talk about it at a regular meeting, we can schedule another side meeting, as many meetings as we need to have.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
You're all set, Jefferson.
So good evening, everybody. As you can see, I put up the revenue projection here. So I'll just go down the list and discuss each one for you. Right at the top, we have special education aid. These are revenues from state sources. Special education aid used to be called catastrophic aid. This is monies that we receive from the state for our out-of-district tuition costs to places like Spalding Youth Center or Mount Prospect or whatever else. It's based on how much we spent in the prior year, and they have a special formula that they use. It's called 3 times the state average, up to $150,000 per child. So I used a estimate of about $122,295 to give you an idea. We received $152,000 this year, and our out-of-district costs, pending any potential changes for this year, are on par from last year. So I use a conservative number because the state also likes to shortchange us and don't give us an entire entitlement. So I don't want to get over anxious or what's the word? What's that? Overzealous. Well, zealous, I don't know what's up, but either way, they usually allow us to have a range between, say, 62% and 100% of what our anticipated entitlement was. So I try to underestimate a little bit. Charter school aid, that is money we receive for children that go to Compass Charter Academy that we have to provide special education aid. They give us a flat amount. It's around $1,900 per child that receives services that we have to pay for in the prior year. Vocational transportation aid is based on the head count of the number of students that go to any vocational program like Hewitt or Winnisquam Ag Center. And we got this past year, we got about $5,900 for vocational transportation aid, so I put $5,000, a safe number there. Adequate education grant, that's our big one. As you can see, in the second column, this is the current year that we are expected to receive $8.7 million this year. What happened is, and you can see why the estimate is so much lower for next year, is the amount we received this year was based on a formula that had 2 components that actually expired in the biennium budget. It was a disparity aid component based on the economic status of the community, and the free and reduced population had an additional amount of money based on your percentage of free and reduced people. Those 2 components expired, so until the state passes a new budget, we don't know. The estimate that we got from the state is much lower because it's based on the old formula. Obviously, if the legislature makes the decision in the new budget development then to reactivate those 2 components, then our amount of money that we'll end up getting will end up being larger, but we can only work on certainties right now. The expiration of those 2 pieces account for about $900,000 of our loss from this year to next year. And then the additional difference is based on, we had a significant drop in our free and reduced rolls, the amount of people that were eligible, amount of students that were eligible for free and reduced meals. And that's related to, because of COVID, we are allowed to provide meals to every child regardless of ability to pay. So it's 100% of the meals that we provide are being reimbursed by the federal government. What that also meant was a lot of families didn't fill out free and reduced applications because there was no need for them to do that. However, the issue is they don't understand why we're actually been very aggressive the last several months to get these families to fill it out. Is it affects other funding sources like adequacy aid or federal grant Title I aid. Those are always based on our free and reduced percentages. So to give you a perspective, we had about a little over 600 students qualified for free and reduced, or above 60%, about 65% of our student population. That dropped 250 students from this last year to this year. So our estimate for the amount of money we'd be getting for free and reduced component of the adequacy aid grant, which is about equivalent to almost $500,000. We've made some inroads since then by reaching out to families to have them complete applications. We also, the other issue too is we get what they call a direct certification report from the Bureau of Nutrition that those families that automatically qualify for other state services such as food stamps or something else, we had a drop in those head counts too, and that my estimate or guess on that is related to unemployment stimulus money that families received that might have made their income levels higher than they normally would be, so they fell off those state services. So that contributed to why we lost 250 kids. Statewide, that came out to about 11,000 kids that were no longer on the free and reduced population for the adequacy aid grant formula. So we're hopefully making some inroads with that. I revised the estimate a little bit based on the number of applications we have received since then. They will actually determine the free and reduced piece of that based on our final numbers at the end of this year. So as we continue to reach out to families and get them to fill out those applications and hopefully qualify, that'll help that number, because if we don't get our final adequacy aid grant number until October 1st of next year, so we always have to run on an estimate.
I can also just add, Jefferson,
Yep.
that there is proposed legislation to deal with this free and reduced lunch issue that's in the legislature right now. So there's a couple different approaches that are being looked at in terms of reverting back to last year's numbers and holding districts harmless in terms of this year's numbers, because this is not just a Franklin issue, it's a statewide issue. So we'll continue to follow that process as well and see how that works itself out.
Next on the list is building aid. That is money we received from the state based on the old building aid reimbursement formulas before it all fell apart a few years ago, where if you had to finance a construction project for a district, the state would reimburse you a certain amount based on approval of the plan. So this is what we're receiving for one of our construction loans that we're still paying on. That will continue until that loan is paid off every year. Indirect costs are monies we receive for the administration of all of our federal grants or state grants based on an indirect cost rate that the state calculates based on our prior year financial statements we submit at the end of the year. Medicaid reimbursement, so I've kept that level funded. We are, obviously you can see our 1920 actuals are very low, 36,747, so that doesn't look too good. However, the problem was they changed the rules 2 Augusts ago and required a medical professional to sign off on all the individual education plans for any of the students, which required a lot more hurdles for us to reach out, get a medical professional to sign off. We had attempted to get family doctors to sign off of it. We've made a lot more inroads on that this year. We actually have a company we're working with that goes through our Medicaid administrator So to give you an idea, so far this year, we've received over $90,000 already. So we're definitely making strides with that. I'm pretty confident that $175,000 is a reasonable number. E-rate funding, that's also another piece that's related to actually free and reduced population. It's reimbursement for our internet communication costs that we get for the school district. We get reimbursed a percentage of that from the federal government. It's called the Universal Serviceability Act. So tuition, that's money we receive from other districts throughout the state for a child to come here. We do have a child that does come here from another school district, and so that's based on our approximate tuition rate, which we won't know for certain until after this year is complete. But right now it's over $18,000. Earnings on investments, just interest that we get on our bank account. Because of Federal Reserve's changes, our interest rate has gotten really low on what we get for putting money in the bank. So I lowered our estimate by quite a bit for this year. Other local revenue is just incidental type stuff. Credit that we might get on items that were returned, or small other things, selling a small asset or something of that nature. Insurance premium holidays, these are funds that we get returned to us by our insurance providers, like Primex, that does all of our property and liability, work comp, and unemployment insurance. Health Trust for school care, they're all called insurance pools. So based on state law, they're only allowed to have in reserve a certain amount of funds. So if they have above that threshold, they have to return a chunk of money back to the members. This number that I put in there is based on actual numbers that I know we're going to get back. We could end up getting a little bit more. This is primarily between Primex and school care, which is one of our health insurance providers. Health Trust, I don't know, but we do get some premium holiday typically from them, and it's one of our collective bargaining unions uses Health Trust as their insurance provider. So this is my best estimate as to what we're going to get with that. Athletic receipts are basically gate costs, athletic events. New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, this is funds we've been receiving for 2 years now. This is to help support our Project Aware program, which helps funds our social workers for the school district related to mental health. At this time, we don't know if that'll continue again for next year, so I'm not putting that money in there right now. Next one is unreserved fund balance, looking at the numbers as they are right now. This is what we anticipate would be unspent. As you recall, we went to the city a few months ago and requested over $450,000 of additional funding related to the change in our adequacy aid. We got an additional amount once we do the new estimate on October 1st. It actually ended up being higher, which was a very rare occurrence for that happening, but that was mainly because we actually had an increase in enrollment over the past year, so that helped us with there. I think that was about $260,000 of that $453,000. We ended up getting another $75,000 from Project Aware, and then we had additional fund balance. As we requested that from the city, one of the counselors at the time had actually asked us if we could carry that money to help us in a future budget, which is what we're doing, and that's part of that $1 million that I have projected there. $453,000 of it is being that additional funding that we got approved by the city, unrelated to any kind of taxation needed, and the other balance is what we anticipate not spending out of our current year budget, based on the fact that we are in the pandemic situation right now, so it's affected our needs as far as what we had to have to fund our budget this year, so we're able to carry a little bit of fund balance in. Based on our adequacy shortage, it's definitely needed to hopefully carry that forward.
If I can just add real quick, Jefferson.
Yeah.
This has been communicated each month to the city council that we've been doing this intentionally, holding on to this money and trying to beef up our fund balance. So they've been told every month that we continue down this road trying to do this. So when it comes time for us to present this budget to the city, they should not be surprised that we have a large fund balance because we've intentionally done this. And they've been part of that process as well, so just so you all know that.
Is any of this fund balance related to COVID relief funds?
No, it's independent of it.
That's
I
it.
mean, there are expenditures that we've had that we were able to use some of the state funding, or federal funding, I should say, to cover costs related to the pandemic and other things to help support learning loss, compensatory services, and so forth that we've had to experience this year. We've been able to use the stimulus funds for that, but a lot of that is also money that we didn't know we'd have to spend until we got into the thick of it, like we have been this year. So it wasn't stuff that we had originally budgeted for, but we didn't have to rely on our budget that we had approved to cover those costs because we did have those stimulus funds to actually support us with that. The next section down there is the district appropriation. That is the amount of money that is actually raised by local taxes for education. As you can see, based on the anticipated CPI, the city gave us 1.4% was the CPI for 2020. So 1.4% increase gave us an additional $62,543 above what we received for this year's budget. The next line is education tax. This is the statewide education property tax, which the Department of Revenue Administration calculates out for every community in the state. And this is the amount of money that will be raised by the city of Franklin for all the property in the city of Franklin. That'll be our portion. That'll be our portion that we will receive. Next line down. Well, as you can see, obviously, overall at that point, our total revenue estimate is actually down $588,900 approximately overall. And then the next line down is just our food service revenues. We anticipate a level funded that. Food service is a big question mark because we don't know. I know revenues will actually be higher this year, but so will our costs because we actually ran the food service program through this past summer, which we don't normally do. So once that shakes out, we'll know what our total revenues based on our total cost will end up being. But for a safe bet, I just level funded it. Then we have a total of our general fund and food service revenues above and beyond that. Next is what we anticipate for grant funds. Typically, grant funds are offset 100% by the expenditures. So it's a revenues equals expenditures as far as any of our grant funds received. And as our total revenues of $16,909,889.
Okay, before Jefferson moves on, the next item, does anybody got any questions pertaining to the revenues projections that Jefferson just went over with us?
From what I'm, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
What I'm hearing is combination between the state and possibly the feds, that the $915,000 deficit in funding may eventually be covered.
Well, we have several federal sources that we will be able to access, Paul. We had $539,000 that we received for the first CARES Act money the school district received. We just received $2.66 million on the second ESSER funds is what they're referred to. And those funds are good for the next 2+ years, the rest of this year and 2 years beyond. So that's another pool of money that we have to draw from to help with these COVID expenses. And we're all following closely the third stimulus, which is going to be voted on, I think, tomorrow, feds, and we'll be looking at what that brings to Franklin as well. So if that's what you're referring to, Paul, those are the funding sources that
Yes.
we had. Two of them we have in our, And we have hopefully another one on the way.
So we really don't have a deficit of 915,000.
Right, we'll be receiving definitely additional funds, which we'll probably have approved this year. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but that's why I didn't put it in the projection for next year, but they are multi-year sources of funding. So it does help us over the next 2+
Shouldn't there
years.
be a note on the bottom relating to that? If there's
Well, that's part of the
possible-
whole discussion of the budget process in general that we'll be doing anyways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Plus the second round of ESSER, just so you know, Paul, the second round that we got, the 2.66 is to be used over the next 2 budget cycles, this budget cycle and the next budget cycle, okay? So when we're looking at that 2.6, we need to be conscious about that and make sure that we save a surplus of that new ESSER money of the 2.66, so we have it for our following year's budget. And of course, it's all federally guidelined on what that money can be spent on, and most of it deals with COVID expenses and whatnot. The other part of it, on the state part of it, that you talk about is that we're getting ready to have a new biennial budget, okay? So based upon what the last budget is, where there was one-time money put in by the governor into the budget for schooling, and where the new budget has not been approved yet, we're still looking, because it was one-time money in this last budget cycle with the governor, we're looking at a $1.3 million shortfall in the Franklin budget for our school because of the one-time money. We do not know when that money is going to be put back in to the new budget that the governor has presented.
Understood.
So because of some of this is why I'm recommending that we go a little slower this year in terms of making some decisions and waiting until at least April before we finalize any decisions. The more information we have, the easier or better decision we'll be able to make on what's the best course of action. But that's what we know as of tonight.
We have any further, go ahead, Deb.
Under the grant funds, the 326,000, what grants do those reference? The reduction?
Well, so actually, part of that is ESSER funds, because I have it in the 1.8 for this year.
Okay.
So what you're actually seeing is the difference from that, because that's $539,000
Okay.
that we've already approved it this year,
Mhm.
so it's not reflected in next year, so I've
All
tracked
right.
that out.
That's fine.
And then we have other sources of general funding that we've, grant funding that we've received that sort of minimize the difference. Anything that we spend on grant funds, because it could pop up to $2.5 million, but it'll also be equally offset by the expenditures too. So in the end, it just works out whatever it ends up being. It's $2.5 million in grant funds, and until we know for certain, we don't know all that stuff until everything's finalized. And then it'll be offset on the expenditure side by $2.5 million too, so it'll be a complete wash regardless.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions on revenue? Okay, good.
All right. Next, I wanted to turn to enrollment. So we've got projected enrollments. Our projected enrollments are pretty static. They've actually stayed pretty consistent all year long. We've been pretty fortunate compared to some other places. If you look at the handout at the Paul Smith School, Sue's laid out for you what the projected numbers are at each of the grade levels. And what we're projecting is a little bit of a reduction in kindergarten and a little increase in third grade. So her suggestion or her thoughts were to cut one kindergarten teacher or one position at kindergarten and move it to third grade, so basically be a wash.
So her numbers are pretty much, so she would just shift some of her staff around based on the numbers. And you can see the ratios that are there. I think the ratios you want to keep as low as we can. We all know kids have been out of school for in-person learning. We've been in this hybrid situation all year. They were out of school last year from March to June. So I think every effort we can make to keep our numbers lower is going to help our kids. So the 1 to 15 for kindergarten, the 1 to 16 for first grade, and the 1 to 18 for second and third grade, I think are excellent numbers for us to try to shoot for. And then the other thought is the preschool. We are going to try and increase the number of kids in preschool. There's a possibility that we could go from two preschool classrooms to 3. We've been talking about this as a board and part of the strategic plan for a little bit of a while. If we do that, we would use grant funds from Title I to do that. We wouldn't be using district funds. So I think it's the COVID situation which will drive that discussion. If we're still in the COVID world in September, I don't think it would benefit us to expand preschool at that point. But if we're more towards normalcy at that point, then perhaps having a 3rd preschool would be a good option. So I'm not ready to commit one way or the other at this point what we should do. We certainly will have our 2 preschool classrooms, and we'll be bumping the numbers up there. So the new positions that we're looking at the elementary school would be, we are going to call upon an assistant principal. We believe it's time. Her numbers will be over 300 at Paul Smith School for next year. Sue's done an excellent job as a solitary principal in that school, but she's not able to do a lot of the things she needs to do instructionally with some of her newer staff that she's hired over the last couple of years. And I think an assistant principal would help tremendously with her to do that. So we're going to put forward that this year. We also are going to put forward an art teacher. We've been talking about not having an art teacher in the elementary school for a long, long time. And we believe now is the time to do that. So we're going to put that forward as well. And you'll see all of this on our personnel page. We'll get to that in a minute, but just that's 2 of the things that we are going to be looking at the elementary school. At the middle school, Ken has put together for you the current enrollments and the projected enrollments when we move the classes up. We cut a couple teachers at the 4 through 6 level a couple years ago when we had the funding crisis. And we believe, especially due to COVID, that trying to get those class numbers down is essential. So we're going to be looking for 2 new teachers there. You can see the projected class sizes below if we do that, going from 10 to 12 classes, and what that does to the classroom sizes. And then you can see he's also figured out his allied arts and what the class sizes will be for grades 7 and 8. So that's the enrollment there. The high school enrollment is going to be remain the same, so there'll be no changes in that in terms of regular classroom teachers. But if you go to the next page, we can walk you through all the teachers that we're recommending and the costs. So there's a total of 10 new positions that I am recommending that the board consider for next year's budget. The first 2 are the 2 middle school teachers for grades 4 through 6 that we just discussed. We used average amounts. That includes benefits and retirement and Social Security and all that. And we carried it out to fiscal year 23 because of these grant funds that we've referenced in terms of ESSER. We believe we would have enough funding to carry these for at least 2 years. And then we also believe we're going to have the ESSER funds from the 3rd stimulus package to consider for longer as well. At the high school, we are going to be looking to hire a full-time extended learning opportunities ELO coordinator and a computer teacher. Those we've been talking about for quite a while since I've been in Franklin. We believe now is the time to do that. We are going to be looking for the board to approve us hiring a tech integrator for the district. That would be an experienced educator that would work with all of our teachers across the district in integrating technology through our classrooms. You can see the cost there. You'll see then 2 case managers. These are special education positions, one at Paul Smith School because our numbers are rising, and one at Franklin Middle School, which the board actually approved for me to hire this week. Or last Thursday. Was it this Thursday?
No, it was last week.
Last week, thank you, last week. And then you'll see the art teacher that we just talked about at Paul Smith School. That's been talked about since I've been here, the last 5 years. The assistant principal's position, that would be a 195-day position. We don't need it to be full-time, full year like at the other 2 schools. And that would be with benefits included. And then the creating alternative pathways teacher assistant at Franklin High School. We have an alternative program that we run, and we want to have an assistant for that teacher, and that's the last position there. So you can see the estimates for fiscal year 22 is just under $800,000, and for fiscal year 23 is $868,963. Those are the positions that we'd like to have considered and discussed for this year's budget moving forward. I don't know if we want to talk about that yet, or if you want to go through.
Well, we'll see if there's, are there any questions either dealing with enrollment or questions pertaining to the projected additional staff that the superintendent is requesting? Go ahead, Deb.
The CAP teacher assistant, is that a support staff position?
Yes, it is.
Is it full-time school, through the school year, 35 hours a week?
Yeah, 6.5 hours a day.
Okay,
Paul?
32.5.
32 and a half.
Yeah.
Rhetorical
That's
question.
full-time.
If enrollment drops in the Paul Smith School to 295, do we can the assistant principal? Probably not. I was asked to do a study, and I'm free from some of my conflict of interest, which were external, not internal to the school. Since January 2018 to the end of 2020, 150 children have entered Franklin. There were 586 arm's length transactions in those 3 years. So we have somewhere, statistically, between 125 and 150 new students in Franklin. How much of that did we capture? Absolutely 0. There might have been some transitioning in and out. What the figures work out as 586 arm's length transactions, 10% are clutter and clatter and repeats, so those are removed. People that are selling have fewer children than people moving in. The statistics is 0.25. So for every sale, a quarter of a student or a quarter of a child less than 18 leaves the district. On the inward put, there are, per new sale, on average, there is 0.48 students. So for every 2 sales, you get a student. The Franklin school system has not captured any of those new students. Where are they? Homeschool, private school, charter school. So they've gone to the competition. That doesn't mean some have not come to the Franklin school system, but it means that out of 150 students, new entrants, where are they? Well, they're not here, so we're not capturing those students. My sources of information: Applied Economic Research, New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, the study that was done for the Winnisquam School District in 2017, pre-COVID, my own work, as well as the recent study that was done and I think completed in Manchester in 2020, November of 2020, that showed declining enrollment over the previous 10 years in all schools by 20%, and in the high schools by 30%. And here we are adding positions on declining and/or static enrollment. I do not foresee us. The 150 new students, by the way, 125 who want a variance, those students are not in Franklin, which I previously mentioned. We're not going to capture, we're not capturing the market. People say, well, we need more money. Studies that I worked on in Vermont, no matter what the attendance level is or the enrollment level is, if the enrollment goes from, pick a number, from 500 students in a school district to 400 students in a school district, Vermont still gives them 95% of the money of the previous year's monies that came from the state. So it's not a question of money, it's a question of what type of job are we doing? Why aren't we capturing a greater source? It's probably public information, but I worked with the Compass Classic Academy, and they purchased recently 100 acres in Samanton, and within 5 years they'll be building. Say, well, loss of Franklin students. No, the Compass Classic draws from Plymouth to Manchester. One student, I think, comes from Derry, and just as wide. So they have Franklin students, but they don't have that many Franklin students because they're drawing mostly from the outside. Parents drive their kids to classes. So we have a catch-22 where enrollment is stable and or declining, and we're adding 8 new positions and roughly $1 million in cost. It's not jiving. And the additional hirees will not increase enrollment. I made enrollment projections way before COVID, December of 2019. In July school board meeting, I also addressed enrollment projections. School boards tend to spend money. That seems to be their job. I've never met a physically conservative school board in all my work, and in all my 40 years of doing business as self-employed. It just seems we're going to spend more money because, well, we're going to spend more money, and it comes from the taxpayers, and so therefore we can just spend more. There is nothing to say demographically that we need to hire 8 additional people. Yet we're still going to move ahead. I am one of 9. I can't influence, but I can present information to the city council and the taxpayers, and I'm guessing we're on YouTube, so this is pretty well out there, that we're spending money, we're running deficits, and we're not capturing the market. Our market is declining, and it's going to continue to decline. What amount? I don't know. People move to Franklin because of affordability. They have families, they don't want to raise them in condominiums, they don't want to raise them in apartments in Manchester or Nashua. No one wakes up in the morning and says, hey, let's move our kids to Franklin. They come here because that's the place that's most affordable, so they can get out.
I'm asking for questions. We need to stay on track, Kate. We're going all the way to some other thing. Do you have a question pertaining to what has been presented so far?
So you're shutting me down?
I want to know, do you have a question pertaining to what has been presented so far?
You're shutting me down.
Do you have a question pertaining to what's been so far?
Look me in the eyes. You're shutting me down.
No, I want to know.
It's on public record.
No, I'm not shutting you down. I want to know if you have a question.
Can I respond, please?
Sure.
All right.
I want to stay on track here.
Do we or have we ever run a deficit?
We are presenting tonight a tax cap budget.
So, it's not physically, economically possible for us to run a deficit, correct?
Well, no.
All right, so that's number one. So number 2, it's our job as a school board to give the best education we can to the children of Franklin. That's not my opinion, that's our stated job. I would ask Paul, is there any high school, private, charter, otherwise, that doesn't have a computer teacher?
I do not know.
we haven't had a computer teacher here, and our high school requirements require that our students graduate with, is it a half credit of computer courses? We don't offer any computer courses because we don't have a computer teacher. You know, as far as I'm concerned, all of these positions are absolutely required, and we are doing our best to make up for losses that we've had over the last about 4 years. How many positions have we lost over the last 4 years, Dan?
35.
35. I'm fully in favor of these added positions.
If I could just ask you to speak, Paul, going back to the assistant principal, it's not a decision based on enrollment, it's a decision based on improvement. What's happening is that we have a lot of new teachers in the elementary school, and we have a gifted principal in instruction. But because she doesn't have an assistant principal, she spends most of her day dealing with student issues and not enough of her day at working with her teachers. So if we want improved instruction, and we want kids to do better, we need our principal working with our teachers. And the only way to do that is to have an assistant principal that will handle the student issues. We've had kids in COVID world now for a year. So it's not like we're gonna bring 300 kids back into that building and the kids are just gonna sit and do their work. It's not gonna work that way. We're gonna have kids that have issues transitioning and being able to sit and function in that. Because a lot of the kids in kindergarten think it's normal to have 5 kids in a class, because that's all they know. So when we have to put 15 kids in a class, or 13, 14 kids in a class, they're gonna have a difficult time adjusting. So we will need an assistant principal there to help support our kids and behaviors and all the things that happen with young kids. And if we want our principal doing that, then our principal won't be helping our teachers become better teachers so that our kids perform better. Because we have performance issues. Our kids are not performing as well as we all want them to. So the only way for our kids to perform better is to have our principal working with our teachers so our teachers are better. The other piece of that is we have a principal who's only going to be working with us for a few more years. And if we like the direction our elementary school has gone in, which I believe is universally everybody likes that, what better time than to mentor somebody so that when she decides to retire, we can move forward and have somebody who knows the ropes and can step into that role. Whether we need an assistant principal at that point or not, we probably won't need it anymore because we'll be out of the COVID world. Our enrollment will be lower, as you predicted, as you stated, and what you said. And then hopefully this person that we train over the next couple of years will step into that role and we'll just continue on. I mean, one of my jobs is to build a sustainable future for Franklin. You know, when I first got here, all I kept hearing about was turnover, turnover, turnover. Everything's turnover, everything's starting over again. So for the last 6 years, it's all been about how do we build this so we have sustainable futures. So if you want a sustainable future at your elementary school, take advantage of the federal money that's coming to us, put an assistant principal in that building for the next 2 years with the federal money, and build some sustainability there so that kids will learn how to read better. So when they get to middle and high school, they'll perform better. It has nothing to do with enrollment.
Thank you for your astute observation. It makes a lot more sense
Thank you. Yeah,
than what I was hearing
I thought it would, yeah.
And that's why,
all other sources.
and that's why, Paul, I
You're
wanted
very
to-
good at presenting real information that I can use.
see, that's why I wanted to kind of get the question, because I think we're just at the beginning of the budget. I think once you hear everything, you'll have a better understanding. And then if you wanted to put any of the research out there that you've done, I'm not gonna shut you down from it, but I feel that we need to listen to the whole budget to get the big picture instead of just the smaller picture, which is, we're only a short distance into this, so the board does not have a full picture of it. So, I mean, you're more than welcome, once the full budget is presented to you, and you wanna state whatever you wanna state, I'm not gonna shut you down. But I just wanna make sure we all get the big picture before we start asking questions or know what we wanna say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Got it.
Okay, so the next section with all the small print on the paper, for the paper, those of you looking at the paper copy, and it's up on the screen, is all the things that we went through in the budget that was asked for by our department heads and by our principals, that we decided to either eliminate from the budget because we thought it was wasteful, or I thought it was wasteful, or that we thought we could spend using grant funds or these federal funds that are coming to us. Because we felt that that would be the best way to support the Franklin taxpayers, was to take advantage of the federal monies that are coming to us. So as you go down that list, and I'm not going to read off every item to you, but as you go down that list, you can see the items and the amounts, what they are, and what funding source we were going to move them from the Franklin supported budget into a grant funded budget, which would either be Title I or ESSER, which are both federally funded, federal funds that we receive. The idea being that taking advantage of this federal money that's coming to us, all the things that qualify, we should take advantage of that so that the Franklin budget can stay at a tax cap budget. Because for the last 2 years, we have come in as a board, you have come in as a board with a tax cap budget, and you will do the same thing, I believe, again this year, at a tax cap budget. I mean, there'll be 3 years in a row where you'll go to the city council with what they've asked you for, which is tax cap. So that's what I'm presenting to you tonight. The good news is that you have access to these federal funds for at least 2+ years now to help support the things you've talked about for the last 5 years that you wanted. So we've got federal funding that helps us to accomplish all of this. And that's before the third stimulus, which we hope to hear about sometime in the upcoming weeks. So if you want to ask questions about anything on this list, we can go down this list. It's mostly technology type equipment, supplies, software, buildings and grounds. Most of all of these things are eligible for the COVID relief money. So what we did is everything that we thought would apply to the COVID relief money, we took it out of the Franklin budget for the most part, and we placed it in the ESSER funds because they all qualify for that. And when we did that, you can see we came up with a total of, I'm not sure if I'm reading this right, Jefferson, but is it almost $1 million?
Yeah, the total amount cut from the general fund and proposed budget at the administrative level was just a little over $1 million. So,
Just about $1 million that we either cut or moved from the original ask of the department heads and the principals. So that's how we made up the difference. That's how we got to tax cap at this point. So I guess what I want the board to know is what I'm suggesting to you tonight is a tax cap budget that keeps all of our current staff, includes 10 new positions, and takes advantage of the federal monies that are being offered to us, which if we don't spend, we have to give back to the federal government. And I can guarantee there's nobody here that wants to do that, I don't think, wants to give back the federal monies to the feds. So that's what I'm putting on the table for you to then talk about, discuss, and debate. So that's my presentation, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Cecile.
The HVAC repairs, is that going to be for all, they're all 3 schools, so they're going to be up to snuff for this COVID or any other thing that's coming down the road?
Well,
Or is it just general repairs?
yeah, general repairs.
Yeah.
You know, we had a vendor reach out to us that wants to do a big project with the HVAC because they heard we were getting a ton of money. So big surprise, the vendor reaches out to us and wants to do $1 million project. That's something to consider. The board can consider doing a HVAC, repairs or renovations in your buildings. That's something that other school districts have considered. If we get a big chunk of money with the next round of stimulus, that's something that we can talk about. We have not heard from our maintenance director or from anybody else that our HVAC system isn't working. We have it maintained, it's older, but it functions. We haven't heard that it's not functioning. But if it's something that this board wants us to look into, Jefferson and I can start the legwork to figure out what it might cost to do redo our HVAC systems, how that would play out. I know.
I was concerned with the air quality, so everything has been.
We've been in school for a year during
Yeah,
COVID,
and
and we've
everything.
had no
Yep.
spread of COVID, no issues with that. I mean, without having an engineer come in and do what an engineer does, we've had our maintenance guys, we pay a company to maintain our HVAC systems. They're here all the time doing that with the heating systems. It's not something at this point that I would be recommending to you. Yeah, it might be worth looking at if we get a big chunk of money.
I just want to make sure that it's
Jefferson, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Well, yeah, a lot of this that we cut to the budget is actually being moved to the federal funds to keep the HVAC system working properly. There hasn't been actually any real indication that HVAC systems have greatly affect the spread of coronavirus. They did a massive study in the state of New Hampshire on all the nursing homes, and no nursing homes had outbreaks. And they studied 29 different nursing homes, some with the oldest HVAC systems, some with the newest HVAC systems, and were able to determine that the HVAC systems had no effect on the spread of the virus. But we obviously want to make sure our HVAC system is proper ventilating the schools, and obviously the focus in our budget was to make sure that is the case. And as with any kind of mechanical system, there are issues that can pop up. So we have allotted some funds to make sure that any of those issues that might arise, we can keep the system working properly. And that's what we look at. And obviously, as Dan mentioned, as any vendor that does this for their business, they're always looking for when you want to upgrade or do stuff. And we know our HVAC system is quite old, but it is actually working very properly. And as Dan had mentioned, our company maintains the system, but there are things that need to be fixed on occasion that just break because of that. But everything's working.
Well, if the money becomes available, I think we ought to explore doing over the HVAC system. I'm not going to mention it here, but if we go back to January of 2020, I mentioned a number of things when we reviewed the Homeland Security Report. Someplace it's on record, I'm sure. And yes, we should review and upgrade our HVAC systems if the money's available.
That's certainly something we can look at.
We want Dan to kind of see how.
These people would get to stop sharing.
Stop sharing. Dan Clark.
Hello?
Hi, Dan.
Hi.
You've heard some questions that have talked about on the HVAC system.
Yes.
Okay, since you've taken over as the facilities director, you had an opportunity to kind of go to the schools and look at our HVAC system and see where we stand or how things look with them?
I have been. I have been in all three schools. I have been working hand in hand with the people that are working on them. And I can tell you right now that all of the air filters have been changed in all the schools on HVACs prior to me taking over. So within the last year, we do have our air quality check once a year. We are within the recommendations of that. I'm going to say that our HVAC systems are old, but we are running 90% right now in all schools. We have very minimal problems. We get them dialed in pretty good.
Okay. Are there any of them that are coming up to the end of their life expectancy? I know we got obviously, the older section of Paul Smith in the high school, your oldest schools in the city, with the old section of Paul Smith being built in 1967 and the high school being built in the 1920 something, whatever it was. I know they've done updates on our high school, but with our older buildings, what are our HVACs? Are we coming up to life expectancy for they needed to be changed out?
Yeah, I don't know as far as the life expectancy, they are old, but the parts are still available for all the systems we have. And we haven't had any problems as far as getting the the air filters, the belts and stuff that we need to repair these. So, you know, to run these another few years, I don't feel that would be a problem. Until we get into a position where we can't get these parts or we can't get the proper repairs on them, I'd be concerned. But right now, everything that I've seen, everything I've tried to repair and everything I've worked with them, they're all up to date. My bird's trying to help out. Sorry about that.
I can speak
So,
to
yeah.
that a little bit too. What Dan had mentioned about our company that does our HVAC, the part of the stuff that they proposed is dealing with those air handlers that are long in the tooth, so to speak. So that is what's being addressed with that. And obviously, if we can find federal funds that are coming through, that would be our ability to address those issues that you just asked about.
Right.
So that's one thing to look at.
And I can tell you too, Paul, when EEI did their energy audit here, and we did our energy upgrade to the school systems, HVAC was looked at, and some of these air handlers that are 25, 30, 35 years old, EEI looked at it and said, you know, we're gonna be coming to the point where we're gonna have to seriously look at this, and it's $1 million project.
If the money's available, go
Right.
for it. Yeah,
So I'm just letting, you know, but to give you an idea of
sure.
what it's looking at and everything like that, those are some of the things that, you know, that we've looked at, so, thanks, Dan. Jefferson dropped the school budget, the 2021-2022 Franklin School District budget into a shared drive with everybody. That was done on March 2nd. Has this board had the opportunity to start reviewing this budget?
Since day one.
I knew you would, Paul. So, I mean, I think this is where we need to get into, is with this budget of what in there. I mean, do you want a short presentation by each administrator to kind of give you an idea of what their concerns are, what they want, or why they put in with their budget and stuff? Would that have a better understanding for everybody?
Yeah. I took a day and went over all of the budget presentations, you know, on the desktop, live screens, and whatever else. And there was, note this down, I had no concerns or objections in anything that was presented in the budget. I saw nothing that even raised a question mark. Sure, there can be individual questions and you go line by line, but going from top to bottom, I saw nothing that stood out that I would even think about as a question.
Thank you, Paul.
Well,
And I'm kind of centered that same sentiment as you did, Paul, having the opportunity to go over this full budget. And I've stated this to City Council, I've stated it in finance meetings. I look at the bottom line of what our budget is, okay? And obviously, being a tax cap community, the request from the city's always been for us to present a tax cap budget, okay? And I think it's important for the citizens, but I also do not want to take away from the education of the children of this community. But I understand in the trying times that we're in that, you know, we do live in a tax cap community, and we have to come in with that. So when I looked at the bottom number and saw that the increase was only by $200,000, and it's a tax cap budget, I have to give hats off to the full administrative team to do that, okay? And I don't see anything in there either that should not be there, including the presentation of personnel that are needed to educate, to enhance and bring forward even better the education for the children of this community. So I always looked at the bottom line number. The bottom line came in at tax cap. You know, we know that the city does not anticipate giving us any more money than what is allowed under the tax allocation, okay? Jefferson has included that in there. So I think this is a positive step for us to come in again, because this is, you know, as Dan said, this will be a third year where we're not gonna have to ask for any additional revenues from the city. But yet be able to even enhance the education for the children of the city. So I support this budget 100%. So if anybody else wants to speak on the budget, or have questions on the budget, hopefully everybody's had the opportunity. If not, I understand. And we can always schedule another budget meeting. But if anybody has any other questions, we have our administrators on there. They can answer all the questions. They've sat with Dan and Jefferson since January to do this budget and to be able to present this budget to us tonight. I mean, there's still a lot to digest, and I think Dan's correct, and we kind of have to wait to see where our revenues are going to be because they can fluctuate up or down. But this is your opportunity to ask your administrators any questions you may have for the budget. Deb?
I just want to make a comment that I think that the budget has been prepared very carefully, considering all the components of our revenues as well as the needs of our kids. And I think that the administration, Dan and Jefferson, have done an excellent job. As I went through the budget line by line, I was able to get my questions answered directly from Dan or Jefferson, and want to commend the administration for doing their due diligence in providing the necessary tools to help our teachers teach our kids what they need to do to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Is there anybody else?
I looked all around for my live interactive digital budget, but I couldn't find it. Did I miss something? You know, what's interesting is for 40 years, I have worked with spreadsheets, live interactive spreadsheets. So I come on the school board in 2017, and what do I get? 80 pages of a printout. So 2 years ago, it got upgraded to a PDF format, thanks to Donna Green. And so here we are, still dealing with a dead PDF copy. I think the school budget process is probably the most archaic, asinine proposal that project that there ever is. It's the most regressive presentation that I've ever worked on in 40 years of self-employment. It's not done behind closed doors, but they're not willing to share. I am going to make a motion, and we'll find out who the obstructionists are to self-disclosure and transparency. I move, by the way, the school administrators work for the school boards, not the other way around. I move that any school board member that wants a digital copy of the budget that's live and interactive receive a copy of the school budget.
Could I request that you clarify more specifically?
Excel
An
format.
Excel spreadsheet that just has all the numbers and the.
And then-
Same thing we have here, but in a live spreadsheet.
But would you be able to?
I'll second so that we
I
can
just
move on
have a
to, so we
question
can have
as well.
discussion on it.
The question is, would you be able to manipulate that data?
Well, it's called sensitivity analysis. It doesn't matter what I'm going to do with it. There's a hard copy, there's a backup copy. Supposedly, I hear we have the most secure computer system servers in the world. So guess what? Jefferson has the premier copy. But I think when you have someone that's on the school board that can actually read a budget and do sensitivity analysis on the budget, that they should be given a copy of the budget. There was legislation, last legislation, COVID shut down the discussion on it, of where anybody that's on any public budget committee would have a live copy of the budget. By the way, I'm looking for a second. Do I have a second?
I seconded it so we could continue discussion.
All right, so
Thank you.
motion was made by Paul Doucette a motion to have a live
It's called the live interactive
budget for school board members, and that was seconded by Delaney. I'll now open it up for discussion.
I bring this out because between Principal Darcy and Vice Chair Delaney Courier have done an excellent job in bringing transparency to the Franklin School Board, the Franklin School District. They have made just about everything that can possibly be made public that the public has available in real live time. I believe having a live interactive copy of the budget is the last part of the transparency. I realize you guys that get paid the big money have your marching orders from the New Hampshire Association of School Boards and Administrators and whatever else. But there's no reason why an active member of the school board cannot have a digital copy of the budget, other than we're gods and we're not handing it out. Thank you.
For discussion, I would ask, what is from what we get to what you're requesting, what would be the benefit of it?
Good point. It doesn't matter what the benefit is. It's a matter of, as a school board member, I want a live copy of the budget.
So define live copy for the record.
Live copy is an Excel format. When Jefferson first came on board, and when we had discussions back in 2018, before I had to resign from the school board for conflict of interest, I did receive an Excel copy of the budget directly from Jefferson.
So that was a live copy.
Live copy, interactive. I had a great time.
Okay. So
And I voted to approve the budget that year. So
I understand, but for discussion, I just want to get some clarification from you on the benefit of it. We receive a PDF form that's in the computer that has all the information in there that is presented as our budget to us through a PDF form. So what is the benefit of having it as a live form and a PDF? So kind of walk me through what the benefit would be.
Oh, sure. The benefit is the fact of sensitivity analysis. You change one item, what other items are changed with it? Meaning each cell has a backup in it. You change one cell, what else changes within the system? This particular year, we're being hit with increases in the retirement fund. State legislature, nothing we can do about it. But what does that do? If you hold everything else constant, what does that do to the budget? I mean, this is above and beyond. It's because I have the skills. I've done it for 40 years. And to be given a PDF copy is almost like a slap in the face. No one that I've ever done consulting work for has given me a dead PDF copy. In 40 years, no one's given me a dead copy. So I come on the school board, and what am I treated with? A dead PDF copy. A dead PDF copy is about as useless for anybody that has a background in economic and finance. You all know MBA in economic and finance. So I have the skills. The benefit is you're going to get one thing you're going to get out of me is I'm not going to rag on the budget until we pass it. But we have the most archaic budget system. School boards have the most archaic budget system in the United States, in New Hampshire, in Franklin.
So I've done budgets for many years also.
On the same level that I have?
And I'm not saying I don't have to be on I don't have to be on your playing field.
Got it.
Okay, but I can tell you that I've worked in budgets and I've had both areas of PDF, okay, and live versions. So I understand where you're coming from, but you really haven't given me a reason of why the change should be made. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I've looked at both sides.
I don't have to give you a reason.
No, you don't, but this is for
I'm not
discussion.
going to explain it anymore.
Okay. You can leave it at that. That's fine with me. Go ahead, Cecile.
Clarification, is it, by having it alive, I'm not a computer whiz, so you would just be doing an analysis of it, of where monies could be possibly moved or changed, or?
The sensitivity analysis, in a nutshell, is one item changes, what else changes? That's all sensitivity analysis is.
And would that help the board with something? Or are you just kind of playing with
Well,
the
unless
numbers?
somebody's on my playing field, it's not gonna help anyone but me.
Yeah, we'll trickle through.
Yeah, thank you. All right, do it. Got it. I'm,
You all set, Cecile? I want you to.
Well, I guess so. I'm trying to figure out if that's going to benefit us in doing the budget with him playing with the numbers.
With a live version?
Yeah, that's all.
well, won't change anything.
It won't change anything. Okay, so you just want to do it so you can play with the budget?
I'm doing it for the reason of transparency. Long and the short of it, back everything else out for reason of transparency. It's the last item of a school board that is, in this school board, that lacks transparency. We're thousands of miles ahead of school boards throughout New Hampshire and Vermont. This is just one additional piece.
Delaney?
I would agree that being able to have an Excel spreadsheet and be able to manipulate numbers for budget analysis would be a good idea for me as well. My question would be, what is or is there standard practice for school boards for the state of New Hampshire? Are there any legal questions involved in providing board members with a budget spreadsheet that they could manipulate? And would you want restrictions on being able to take that information elsewhere?
And I guess I'd refer that to Jefferson or to you.
Well, this came up before.
Yeah.
Rack our brains, Jefferson, back when we first started.
So we did this before, and Paul's correct, we did end up giving him a copy. That's what we did in 2018. I could always check with our attorney again, come back at next week's meeting and give you the answers you're looking for, if you're looking for me to get some more information.
Jefferson, you want to add?
I don't know of any issues, otherwise I obviously have everything as a budget. I can give a spreadsheet of it and you can manipulate it however you want. There's no issue with that as far as me creating that report. It's not that complicated.
But on a
It's
live
just
version
standard
too.
Development process, that's all.
I mean, no numbers will be able to be changed by anyone other than yourself with the live version, correct?
Well, an Excel spreadsheet is just a manipulative document. It's not a shared document, so he
Correct.
take it on, put it on his own computer, do whatever he wants to it. But it wouldn't affect our budget in the program.
Yeah.
It has no interaction with the financial software program that we use. It's just a format that is like a PDF or a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet. It's just a separate document that can be, and you can even manipulate a PDF if you wanted to, if you have the program for it.
Right, so you should be able to, on an Excel spreadsheet, put a header in there that says draft, not for publication, and you should be able to make it a password protected locked field, so that couldn't be changed by whoever was manipulating the Excel spreadsheet.
Well, right, I mean, that's the issue. You couldn't present it as a district budget.
The debate we had before is that we don't want somebody taking this, changing numbers, and then publishing it
Right.
as an official document. So we would need to have some kind of security to lock it as a draft and not as an official school board budget.
Correct.
Yeah,
Well,
probably.
2018, I didn't go public with it. As far as putting any locks on it, 90%, 99% sure I can break any locks. Then there's the other thing, do I want to go in front of the New Hampshire Attorney General for whatever you can bring me there for? No, I do not.
Maureen, you got a question, go ahead.
Yes. Shall I say I am spreadsheet reluctant in reading a spreadsheet? And I certainly am familiar enough with Excel in its very simple capacity. So if I just, okay, so you talk about an analysis. about the increase in retirement and how would that impact the overall budget. What I would like to know is it capable of saying, I would like to go and look at a certain portion of the budget, being a former librarian, I'll just use because I did library budgets. I would like to see the library budget. Would I be able to go to that and read it without having to sift through the pages?
Yes, the answer is yes. It's fine, it's up in the left-hand corner, it's called edit, find, and replace. Just put
Okay.
in library, and if there's 20 items in there that deal with the library, they'll all be highlighted and they'll all show up.
Okay, so it does more than just doing an analysis. We're talking about those of us who can read a basic budget. We're interested in maybe a certain part of the budget. Would it allow us to go there without having to turn a lot of pages?
Right. And I'd say,
Yes,
I would
yes.
say,
Okay,
I would say yes, you could.
Okay.
Because you put in media center,
yes,
because that's what it falls, the media center.
yeah, the library media
Break
center.
that down.
I mean, I just use that as an example.
No, I understand.
Okay, so therefore,
Cecile?
everything that's under that particular heading would be listed underneath it. Is that what you're saying?
As it is now in the budget. So,
But in the budget, it's not,
well, it is by function.
by
Yeah,
function.
Each department is a function.
Okay.
So the library would be function
22.
22. Regular education is 1,100, 1,200 for special ed. So if you go to any of those numbers, you're gonna get the full budget along with the totals at the end of that,
Okay.
the set of numbers.
So what's that different than the Excel? I'm confused.
Just the ease of manipulating the information.
Just to check, you're right.
Oh,
You
okay.
can create your own formulas where this,
Okay,
an
yes.
Excel spreadsheet
Right.
would not download formulas. You would have to create your own
Right.
formulas to
Yeah.
manipulate it,
Okay.
correct?
The budget that I received in July of 2018 was a live budget, and it had the cells in place. So if I changed one item, it changed other items, otherwise it's absolutely useless.
You have to send me that one that you're talking about, because the one that I would download from the financial software is a strictly values budget. It won't have functions in it.
No, it added. I just as soon as I got it, first thing I did, with the far right column, added $1 million.
Yeah,
bottom line,
if you could forward that to me so that I can see what you're looking at, to see what it was that I gave you then.
No, it was live, and how I knew it was live and interactive was I added to the far right column, the budget, the actual budget, past budget. I added $1 million at one of the lines, and went right down through, and it increased it by $1 million. Then I hit reverse.
So what's the additional work for you, Jefferson, to make it a live version?
Well, I mean, like the summary budget, that's the full budget proposed.
Yeah.
All it is just me pressing a button and say, make this an Excel document, and that was it. Now, it doesn't have the formulas in it at all, though. It's all values. Every single line, whatever is the value in that, it's the value all carried through. So depending on what you're talking about, I'd have to see that, because I don't remember what that was. And I have to go back and look and see what it was that I created for you, to see if it was a different Excel spreadsheet than what
I
the system
no longer
generates.
have that Excel
You
spreadsheet.
don't, okay. I mean, I can take a look and see what it was that I created
It was
for you.
it was alive with the cell formatting.
With the what?
I think the request would just be to have an export from.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is, it's an export, and I can export the budget.
It shouldn't be a complicated, convoluted process.
Yeah, an exported file though won't have the functions in it. It'll have values, it'll say, you know. if
Yeah,
this
it'll
one's
have
doing-
the functions.
Yeah, the one I just did does not have functions, it just has values.
Well,
You can create that, you can create functions.
the one I received, which I no longer have, computer crash, even though I back up and whatever, I just don't back up to the cloud, so I still don't. If I change one number, all the numbers change.
Any other questions, Deb?
Well, I think that, by the right to know law, the information is available to us, and we all have it PDF. I believe that if it's not readily available and not a already created document, that it doesn't have to be created, and that could be legal check too, with the attorneys or New Hampshire School Board Association.
Well, it's so easy to create, and they
But
have
that's not the point. The point is, we shouldn't have to be having to have our administration or business administrator or superintendent create documents for us that are not already created in their process, because that's giving them additional work. If I was JQ Public coming in and saying, well, I want this and I want that, if it's not readily available for the right to know law, they do not have to create it.
That's why I made the motion.
So, yeah, that's what, that's a good reason to make it as a motion. But
Well,
that's what I'm saying, is if it's not a document that's already created, readily available to the public, then I don't think that the administration should, or by the right to know, have to create that form per request. And that would be a determination of the right to know law.
Well, first off, the New Hampshire School Board Association doesn't give me marching orders, and it doesn't give any school board marching orders unless the school board wishes to accept those marching orders.
But the right to know is an RSA. It's not.
That's why I made a
Sounds
motion.
good. Yep, that's
Okay.
fine.
All right.
But I just gave my opinion.
Okay. Is there any other discussion?
Is it
Cecile?
possible to just table this motion until we get Dan's
That-
reply?
You can do whatever you want as a school board, so someone's gonna, someone needs to make the motion for it and second, and it has to pass.
Okay, I motion to table this motion on the floor, until our next meeting, which will be Monday, so that Dan can clarify the issues with the right to know, or is it okay, is it illegal, or whatever. And just have, just clarification.
Yeah.
It's not illegal.
Oh, it's not illegal.
It's not illegal. We've done this before.
Okay.
And my recommendation is that you just do it, because we have been transparent. We've always been transparent since I've been here.
Okay.
There's no reason for us not to be transparent. So I've already checked with the attorney 2 years ago about this, and we gave it to Paul. So I can check again with the attorney. He's gonna tell me the same thing, and a week from now, we're gonna end up doing the same thing. So I would just recommend that we just vote to give it, that you vote to give it to him.
Okay.
There's nothing to hide.
Thank you. I withdraw my
Okay, so
motion.
the withdrawal is
I
done.
withdraw my second.
Okay. All right, so Kathy, I think we're done with discussion on this. Do you remember, we all set with what the motion was, and was seconded by Delaney, you're all good with that?
Yes.
Okay, so I need a roll call vote then.
Tim Dow,
Yes.
Paul Doucette,
Yes.
Deb Brown,
Yes,
Cecile Cormier,
Yes.
Delaney Courier,
Yes.
and Maureen Oby.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
You have your transparency. And the
We're so far ahead on
And
transparency.
just to clarify something with you, Paul, because I think it's necessary, the administrators do not work for the school board. The only person that works for the school board under RSA and New Hampshire education laws is the superintendent. The administrators do not work for the school board.
Top dog is good for me.
Okay, so the only employee that works for the school board is the superintendent. I just wanted to clarify, because you put that out there, and I think it needs to be clarified so people realize that administrators do not work for the school board. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, with the administrators, I know we took a period of time, and my apologies for that. I'm going to start with Sue because you've all been on here, and I just want to let you touch base on your own budget. If there's anything you'd like to say to the board tonight pertaining to your budget, and I'm going to start with you, Sue.
Thank you, Tim. Good evening, everyone. I think that Dan Legallo did an excellent job of addressing the needs of at least Paul Smith School. I think we've done a phenomenal job over the past 4 years of meeting the kids' needs, and one of the things we need to do is move on from the development of our house model to the implementation of our house model. And to do that, as Dan eloquently stated, I am going to need time with my staff. It's one thing to implement something, and then it's another thing to support it by providing your staff with professional development, with instructional coaching, and with in the moment, in class coaching to help teachers do what's right for kids. For Paul Smith School, I think we've done a phenomenal job of that. We've changed everything in 4 years that sometimes I shake my head and wonder how we've accomplished everything we've accomplished. But now it's time to get to the nitty-gritty. And so, Paul, to address your concerns about the assistant principal really has nothing to do with our numbers, although at Paul Smith School our numbers have been increasing. It has to do with what we're doing with our kids to support our kids instructionally. And so I hope that the board will take a good look at that. I think you're going to see some things. Tim and Dan and I have talked for a couple of years now about preschool. We've talked about art. And so what we're looking for is to really support instruction in the classroom and helping our kids move forward. And that will impact the middle school and the high school. As far as supplies and things like that, we're pretty much status quo. But everything at Paul Smith School that's instructional, our resources, our new up-to-date resources that really support the standards, the Common Core, and support kids in learning. So I hope that the board is pleased with the budget and will support the budget. And I know that the work that we've done there, if you want to talk about fluff, there is no fluff. So thank you for letting me speak for a few minutes. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Sue. All right, now I'm going to go to Ken Darsney to present a short presentation from the middle school perspective. I know he does this with Jay, so Jay, this will be, even though Ken's presenting, we know that you two work as a team, so I know he's speaking for both of you.
Yeah, this is definitely on behalf of Jay and myself. As we enter our fourth year now, as a team, Jay and I, we sort of had the rug taken out from under us towards this time last year as we were in our first year of implementation of our 2 academy model. And I have to say it was tremendously successful, even though we had to do so with reduction in force. If nothing else, we've partnered even more strongly with the elementary school with creating a continuity of our reading and math instruction, so that therefore it's basically seamless what occurs in the elementary school and goes on with us. We do feel that our 4th and 5th and 6th graders are our neediest population, so having a couple of teachers there to add to it, to actually bring it up to the force that it was at when I came on board, would really be something that would reduce our class size and allow individualization for our kids, so the teachers can get to know the kids better and really have data-driven instruction as far as the students go. Lastly, with what Jay's done with culture and climate in terms of monitoring student behaviors, I really am optimistic next year so that we can have a really effective year to sort of not only close some of the gaps that have been caused by the pandemic, but essentially to sort of go beyond and really take a look at our student performance and see that we can do it to go beyond pre-COVID levels. So that's what we've got. Anything else, Jay?
No, that was great. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Jay. All right, now, again, we'll go to you, Carrie, and I know you don't do this alone. I know Tim has been instrumental with you this year as the first year vice principal with us, so I know when you speak on this, you're speaking for both of you.
Thank you very much. With the couple positions that we asked for this year, we asked for an ELO coordinator. We have asked for that in the back. We're looking to next year really move forward and continue working on reducing our dropout rate. So our ELO coordinator will be helping us with internship credits, extended learning opportunities, our partnership with LRCC, our partnership with Winnisquam with Ag, and our partnership with Hewitt. In addition, we would like that ELO teacher to also be working with our incoming freshmen, with our freshman academy class that we're working on creating, so that our students have a great step up for their first year so they can stay on track and not get behind in credits. We also are looking for a computer teacher because it is 2021 and we desperately need one. It's been over 5 years since we've had one at the high school, and you are correct that it's a half credit that they need, but the state is looking to increase that. So having a computer teacher on campus would be wonderful for our students, and to be able to use our technology to their full advantage, whether it be making podcasts and all different creative things that we really need to have access to on our campus. Right now, they can access that at Hewitt, and they're coming up from 8th grade with half a credit from computers in 8th grade. And in addition, one more position is our paraprofessional at CAP. As that program continues to expand under Paul Childs, who's doing a wonderful job up there, and Danny Sylvester is up there too for math, the kids are ebbing and flowing throughout the day. So they go up to CAP for a little bit and they come back, and we're looking to have extra support up there so that we can have more students accessing that space.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Tim, for what you've done with working on this budget with Carrie. We appreciate it. All right, I'm going to go to Rebecca next. Rebecca, I know it's been very challenging for you with your special education department. We've seen some positive outcomes from the state with some of your site visits that we had that has turned into very positive things. So if you just want to touch a little bit on your special education budget.
Sure. Since I started 4 years ago, I've worked really hard to decrease costs associated with out-of-district placements, working to tackle behaviors in schools so we don't have to place kids. And I think we've seen positive changes in that area. Looking to continue to expand on that with the new budget. And by increasing more supports both at FMS and PSS, so we can keep our kids in district, which is the goal. We've seen an astronomical uptick in students with IEPs entering our district, both at PSS and FMS, as a result of COVID. So the numbers for our caseholds are really high right now, which is why I've asked for 2 more positions, a Paul Smith case manager and a middle school case manager. We're hovering around 24 kids at the middle school per case manager and 18 to 19 for Paul Smith. And with the direct instruction amounts being so high at the younger ages and even the lower middle school ages, it's really burdening them. So I appreciate consideration for those 2 positions. Overall, I'm happy with the budget. I feel like it's realistic, but sensitive to the district's, financial limitations and or needs.
Thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
I'll go to Robin next. Robin, I know you've had quite the challenges with our IT and getting everybody up online and our Chromebook on there and new computers for our teachers and stopping what you do at a whim, as I can testify to in that sense of helping me today when my camera wasn't working on my computer system. And I know I've heard from other staff members about how, you're always willing to go running there to one of the schools to get their IT. So if you want to talk a little bit on your IT budget.
Yeah, we've relatively kept our IT budget where it's been. It's taken us 4 years to build the IT to where it is, to go from 100 megabit internet service up to a 1 gigabit internet service. So that's made a huge difference. We've added a lot of tools for the teachers. So the position we're asking for in the technology integrator is to ensure that all of the hard work we've done in building the department is properly utilized by our teachers so that they know how to use the tools we've given them. Spending the money on the tools without someone to help teach how to use the tools makes it wasted money. And we've hit the point now where I think it's extremely important to add somebody for the staff so that they know how to use the tools we've given them and get the best advantage of them.
Thank you. That would be a tech integrator.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you, Robin.
You're welcome.
We'll go up to Dan. I know, Dan, this is your first budget that you've had the happiness to go through, so to speak, to put this budget together, but I will commend you for it being your first budget. When I went through this, I think you did a very nice job, and Jefferson was there to kind of walk you through and help you with this, so I just want to give you an opportunity to kind of speak on your own budget, being the first one you're presenting to the school board.
Yeah, thanks. Being the newbie, yeah, Jefferson didn't have my back. I had a lot of questions. He had them answered. All I put in for basically is to keep the schools safe and clean. My biggest concern is make sure they're having the kids are safe and we have a clean and a happy school, if you will. So the kids will coming back to it, will look at it as a place they want to be and help with us. So basically, if I can just keep going forward, I got a good crew working with us, got good back support, I think we'll be in good shape for next year.
Excellent, thank you, Dan. Okay,
Tim, I think all the administrators will say that Dan Clark has been an amazing addition to our school district.
There's no doubt. I hear it from every administrator.
Yeah. Can't say
Challenging at
enough.
times, but
Can't say enough.
Yeah. I don't think I have heard one negative thing, and I've spoken to all the administrators at some point about their buildings and the cleaning of their buildings, and you're right, Ken, there has not been one negative effect that's been put into or said, Dan, so kudos to you.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of getting everybody dialed in. We're on the right track, and we'll get there.
Right. Thank you, Dan. Barb, you're definitely not left out because obviously your Office of Wellness is very important of what we do here to keep our kids safe. The counseling, the grants that you have recently gone out to get our Stop Violence grant. So I know you have your budget, so I'll let you address the board too.
There's nothing specific that I'm asking for from the board. Most of the Office of School Wellness positions and needs have been either absorbed into the building level needs for their personnel, and the grant funding provides support for a lot of the materials and programming that we need. We did additionally just receive word that our SAP grant will be funded partially for the next year, so that will provide us some additional programming budgeting that we'll need. That position starting this coming year is going to be paid for by a Mayor's Joint Task Force collaborative grant with the city. So what we'll have is some additional funding to go towards our prevention efforts. So I'm not looking for anything new. I'm just trying to juggle a lot of balls and make sure that the funding's coming in to support what we already have going.
And you'll be happy to know that your final signature that you were waiting for on the stock grant, I signed off on that tonight.
Thank you.
So that MOU can now go back out to the federal government so they can start
Giving us our money.
Supplying you with the money that's necessary to continue what you're doing. So thank you though, Bob. Thank you to all the administrators. I know the amount of time. I know you've been working on this since January on this budget. And I know Dan, at the direction of the school board, set deadlines upon you because we have timelines that we as a board have set forth. And this administration, again, has come forward with it and has met the challenges and has gotten those budgets to Dan and to Jefferson. So I just don't want, I want you as an administrative team to know that we as a board recognize the amount of work that is necessary to do these budgets and to get them in on a timely manner so that the school board can have them to review. So on behalf of the school board, as chair of the board, I want to thank you for the amount of time and effort and everything that you've done to present this budget and everything that you do on a daily basis for the children of the city. Are there any other questions for the budget tonight? Okay, what I'm going to do is, because of as Dan has talked about, the numbers, our revenue budget numbers, our revenue numbers could go up. So I'm going to leave it open to let us, if we need to have another one, for Dan to contact me as chair and to possibly have another budget meeting if necessary. If not, then we will look at our April meeting, which would be April 19th, Dan? April 19th to hopefully approve this budget. Is there any objections to that?
Sounds great.
Okay, seeing no objections, we'll leave it at that. Does that work, Dan?
Yeah, and we'll put it on the agenda for Monday if
there's a date, if we have to do something,
Right.
we can.
Yep. Is there any other business pertaining to the budget to be brought forward at this budget workshop this evening? Okay, one other note is Dan sent out, did everybody receive the email from Dan today about the second case of COVID? Do you want to kind of touch on that a little bit, Dan?
Yes, I'd like to. So if you didn't see it this afternoon, we did have a second case of COVID at the Paul Smith School, another staff member that was related to the case we had over the weekend. So we did consult with public health, and we have pivoted to remote learning for the next 2 days at Paul Smith. We will be cautiously watching and trying to make sure that we don't have any other cases. We did have to quarantine 17 students and about 7 staff members because of the 2 positive cases. I'm hopeful that we won't have a third case, but public health is involved, so if we do, that would be considered a cluster. And that would mean that we would have to go for a longer-term closure. So I have my fingers crossed that that's not going to be the case, but want the board to know that that's what is going on right now. So we will reassess Wednesday afternoon and see where we're at in terms of the Paul Smith School. But just in case you are contacted or anything, that we are in full remote at Paul Smith for the next 2 days.
Is there anything else to be brought before the board this evening? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Yay, second.
Second by Paul. We need to do our one final roll call vote, Paul, though.
Thank you, everybody.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, Tim Dow,
Yes.
Paul Doucette,
Yes.
Deb Brown,
Yes.
Cecile Cormier,
Yes.
Maureen Obie,
Yes.
Delaney Courier.
Yes.
At 7:50, the budget workshop is adjourned. And I think that's the earliest we've adjourned before.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
You're in charge of closing the Zoom. Tim, could finance stay for a minute and talk about?
Yep, Delaney, do you have a few minutes to stay for finance?
Yeah, I just need a quick break if we.
Yep, that's fine, we'll go into the SAU anyway.
Yeah, let's do the SAU.
We're going to the SAU.
That way they can clean up.
With the exception of Paul Doucette, because he already told me he weren't doing it, if you haven't passed your evaluation,